Hello and welcome to our third Q&A session. This is just where I answer questions from viewers about pretty much anything. About being a traveling writer, about traveling perpetually, about, making films and documentaries on the road, about just making money while living abroad, or pretty much anything about my life or personally, or anything that you see in the videos that you are, or want, that you are curious about, or you want a little more information on. This is, this is just basically where I talk directly to you, and it gives you a platform to ask me questions directly. Right now, let's get to these questions. This week I have two questions, which pretty much revolve around a similar theme, which is me and my connections to where I come from. My home, the place that I grew up in, Western New York State in the USA. This kind of like rural kind of farming area that's in between Rochester and Buffalo. And the first question comes from Jerry, and he asks, do you get homesick anymore? Do you ever return to the Buffalo area to recharge yourself? Well, I used to, right? Like where I grew up, I don't know, man. I think that I grew up in the best place in the world, or at least the best place in the USA as far as the people that are there. But, everybody probably feels that way because wherever you come from, the people that are there are your people, right? So the Western New York area, Rochester people, Buffalo people, that's my people, And growing up, I had a big group of friends, We do things, we play in bands, we have these concerts, we play sports, we do all kinds of things together. So there's always a lot of activity, growing up through high school. I probably had, the most idyllic, high school career possible. I was a troublemaker, and I had a lot of friends, and I did a lot of fun stuff, right? And that kind of continued on in the years, after high school, through my early 20s. And I started traveling, when I was 18 years old. I started traveling internationally when I was 19. So there's a decent amount of overlap between me having this, really fun community of friends in Western New York and me traveling the world. So during that whole era, yeah, I would get homesick, right? I'd go out, South America, Central America, Europe and stuff. I would be tramping around, hitchhiking and walking between places like crazy long distances and all this stuff. And after a few months, about 6, 7, 8 months, I'd start, missing the people back home. So I would, go home and hang out for a while and then get sick of that and then hit the road again. But more recently, people just kind of grew up, right? A lot of those friends that I, had there, they're not really there anymore. They're not really doing the same thing. And, me, myself, I can't say that I'm as interested in, partying and, getting in trouble and, playing loud music as I was when I was a kid. So a lot of the impetus for going back, or a lot of the reasons why I used to go back and I used to love going back, just don't really exist anymore. Now I still have some friends there, and I still go back and visit them. We hang out and have fun and stuff. But my best friend, he's gone. He's an airline pilot. He rarely ever goes to Western New York. He's around the country, around the world somewhere. So he's not going to be there. And a few years, about 5 or 6 years ago, my parents moved away from the town that I grew up in. I grew up, in the countryside outside of this little village called Albion in Orleans County. And, that was my roots there. And when my parents moved away, it kind of severed me from those roots because suddenly, my parents were there, so why would I ever go back? But to answer your question more directly, I miss my family, and I do go back and visit them sometimes, but I don't know, man. I wouldn't say I get homesick anymore. That's all. That's kind of a chapter of my life that's been, closed, which is kind of sad. But anyway, let's get on to the next question. The next question comes from Stephanie Keller, and she asks, how often do you go back to the USA to visit your family? Do you FaceTime a lot? How do they feel about you being so far away? And are you close with your family? Answer the first one. Usually I go back and I visit my family about once a year. As I said, in 2016 it was a bit of an anomaly. I was there a little bit more often because we were using Maine as a base of operations. That would kind of travel to Central Asia or Europe or Eastern Europe and back from. But my wife and kids were there throughout that year, so I did spend a little more time there than what I usually would. In 2017, I don't know. I wasn't really in the USA much at all. I was mostly in Central Asia and Europe and now Asia, right? Southeast Asia, East Asia, and I don't know. I mean, I think I saw my family once in 2017. 2018, man, I don't know. I have no idea when I'm going to be back to actually see them again. I'm hoping by the summer, but I don't know. And that's what kind of sucks, right? I mean, there is no perfect lifestyle, right? There is no 100% purely perfect way to live a life. There's going to be benefits and drawbacks to however you decide to live. And travel in the world, it looks pretty cool from the outside. And yeah, I mean, I guess if you're doing it, you do think it's pretty cool. Otherwise, you really wouldn't be doing it. But there's definite drawbacks to this lifestyle as well. And the biggest one is probably you don't have the same ties to your family, to your people, to your community, to the place where you come from. It's just not possible, right? And Julie asked, how often do I talk to them? I talk to them pretty often. Every few days or so I'll talk to my mom and dad and sister. But here's the thing, when you live abroad for so long, eventually, no, this doesn't happen right away, right? But eventually you find yourself being removed or completely being dropped from relevance in your family's day-to-day existence, right? They still love you, they still talk to you, they still have hang out, and they're still like aware of you, but in terms of what they do day to day, you're completely irrelevant, man. If they have a problem, they're not calling you, right? If they need someone to fix something, you're not the person that's gonna get that call. If they're, so you're really only gonna get, the big things, right? The big issues, the big problems, the big, joys, the big happinesses, and all these little things that kind of connect these big moments of life. You're gonna completely miss them, and actually, I mean that kind of sucks, but actually, what also really sucks is, they're also missing these, little things, these little experiences that tie together the big events of your life, too, as you travel. This was actually the reason why I started blogging back in 2004, 2005, was just because I became aware that my mom especially had no idea how I lived. She had no idea what I was doing. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to start this blog, and then she can read about what I'm doing and, feel closer to me or have knowledge, like some, idea of what her son is out there in the world doing or trying to do. And it kind of grew from there. It grew into a job, it grew into a career, and eventually it grew into a book deal and grew into me being a journalist. But this all started, this whole writing career, this whole trajectory of traveling the world, being a writer, actually started from me just wanting to communicate to my mom what it is that I do, right? No, it sounds kind of funny, it sounds kind of corny when you put it like that, but yeah, that's really how this whole vagabond journey in terms of writing or making videos and creating content started. Okay, and another question that she had was, how does my family feel about me being so far away? Now they're just used to it, man. I mean, I'm on like year 18, 19 of my travels, right? So it's just something that they've grown used to. In the beginning, the first year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they thought I was just gonna go out in the world and sow my wild oats or something like that, and then come home and get married and have kids. Well, that hasn't happened yet. I mean, they were convinced of it. They thought that I was just kind of on an extended gap year, I'll put it like that. And then I got married. And when I got married, they thought that was it. I'd get married and then all of a sudden that was going to be it. I was going to settle down. We were going to live in Maine or somewhere, have our kids and blah, 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 kind of, be roped into that kind of sedentary life. Well, then that didn't happen. Then we had our baby, and me and my wife and Petra, we went and we lived abroad as we've always been doing. And we just kept going, right? And it's been 8 years now since we've had this kid and traveling abroad and, still living this, vagabond existence. So at this point, they just kind of gotten used to it. And they're also aware now of the economics of the lifestyle. Because before, in my younger days, before I was making a living as a writing, before I was making a living as a writer and, a content creator, I would work like kind of normal jobs, save up a little bit. Usually I work these jobs on the road and now save up money and then go travel and spend all that money, right? So the travel, the actual act of traveling wasn't really, generating income, right? So it was like, two different spheres, money making, travel. And then all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but eventually those two spheres kind of grew together, right? And my parents kind of realized that, traveling is, no longer just something that I do for recreation, but it's what I do for work. It's a big part of my livelihood. It's a major part of my profession. So once they became aware of that, they kind of became aware of that once my first book came out, right? Once they became aware of that, they kind of realized that, to them, my lifestyle kind of solidified itself, right? It became something a little more robust and a little more serious and a little more respectable. And now that, 100% support what I do, like if I told them today that, hey, I'm, gonna go somewhere and buy a house and live this sedentary life, they'd be mortified, right? They just kind of be like, that's not what you do, right? What are you doing? You're crazy. You're not gonna like that. You're not gonna be happy. They would more than likely probably totally react against it, which seems kind of strange. And that's about it. But part of Stephanie's question revolved around the fact that she's planning on coming to Southeast Asia to kind of live abroad, vagabond kind of lifestyle, and she's a little bit worried that she might lose touch with her family. And I don't know. What can I say, right? It's, as I said, there is no perfect lifestyle, and you probably will lose touch with your family, and it sucks, right? Like that moment, that point when you realize that you are no longer relevant on a day-to-day basis to your family, that you are just this, entity that just shows up sometimes, or it's like, the face in the computer when they're on Skype, right? That's, I don't know, that kind of hits your heart. But it's all give and take, right? You travel, you have a lifestyle where, you can look out at, beautiful scenes like this, on almost a daily basis, right? You can go wherever you want. You can do work and jobs that you like. You can eat all kinds of different food. You can, have at least if you're, traveling and living, location, and have a job that's, more or less location independent, you can kind of have more control of your day-to-day existence. But the fact of the matter is that you don't really have a community anymore, right? You are no longer a link in the chain of a community, right? You're an outlier. You're on the outside. You're just not part of that social web anymore. And once you realize the degree to which that you are on the outside, you're gone, man, right? You're gone. That's when you know that you're no longer, just traveling, that you're no longer just being a tourist, but that you're living a lifestyle. And it's good, it's bad, it's fun, it's not fun. There's give and there's take. But for me, man, I wouldn't want to live any other way. I wouldn't trade this for anything. Ultimately. But yeah, I do miss my family. You know, I miss my mom, my dad, my sisters. And I guess I'm really gonna come face to face with this once they get sick and, like, you know, start dying and stuff like that. And I sometimes wonder if I'm going to have any regrets.